Welcome everybody to London Vegans. Very pleased to have you here. My name is Brian Jacobs. I host these monthly meetings, and we have great pleasure in having our guest speaker, well, actually an interview for today's meeting. And I've known Jordi for quite some time, and he may be able to remind me for how long, through the various vegan groups within London. I'm going to read out a little bit of bio for him, and he's going to maybe elicit a little bit more information as we go through this interview. So Jordi Casamitjana is a Catalan-born zoologist, ethical vegan writer, and animal rights campaigner based in the UK since the 1900s, 1990s. Here's a detailed overview. This is per AI, by the way. He transitioned from academic researcher to wildlife protection, worked undercover, consulted for non-government organizations. He served with prominent organizations. He's worked for I4, PETA UK, Born Free, Wild Futures, CIS International, and League Against Cruel Sports. In April 2018, while working for the League Against Cruel Sports, he exposed that their pension scheme invested in animal testing companies, as a result of which he was dismissed from that organization. He filed a legal challenge, and in 2020, January of that year, an employment tribunal ruled that ethical veganism is a protected philosophical belief under the UK Equality Act of 2010, and it's the first ruling of its kind globally. He has published a book, Ethical Vegan, A Personal and Political Journey to Change the World. And he's written, according to this, over 2,000 published articles. Is that right, Jordi?
Yeah.
Wow,
fantastic. I haven't counted them recently, but over 2,000.
So welcome to our meeting. I know Jordi has spoken to us before on, I think it was about hunting, or you came a talk to London Vegans some while back. But we're doing this in the form of an interview. And if anybody has any questions, if they could type them into the box, chat box, and then I'll read them out later, or we'll open up for the discussion and people can ask a question live online. So my first question for Jordi is, what was the turning point in your life that led you to become an ethical vegan rather than just a dietary vegan?
Well, I never considered the option of just being a dietary vegan. For me, because I'm an animal rights person, veganism was just a way to be a better animal rights person. So I never approached it from a health point of view, an environmental point of view. It came afterwards. So when I was already a vegan as an animal rights person, I discovered the other dimensions of veganism, the health, environment, social justice, spirituality. I use this metaphor. I use the metaphor of the vegan mansion. I imagine the veganism is a huge mansion, which is so huge, it's room for everyone. But it has 5 entrances, 5 gateways in. And one is the animal rights, the other is environment, the other is social justice, the other is health, the other is spirituality. So people enter that one for whatever they feel more inclined, the ones they like the most, because the decoration is different. And I chose the animal rights one. But once you're in, you can explore the rest of the mansion. And after a while, you will have visit all the rooms and they all become part of your home. So that's how I feel. I enter through the animal rights. So I was already thinking not just on food, thinking in all the issues that involve animal exploitation. So I was already an ethical vegan from the start. And then I discovered the benefits of health, the benefit of the environment, and all the other things. But I would say because one of the contradictions that I experienced is that I already was working in animal protection before I was vegan. So I was already helping some animals and then wearing others, trying to save some animals and eating others. So there was a huge conflict, which most people experience, but you experience it even more if you work in animal protection. It's more hypercritical. So, and it was that conflict that made me stop my work for a while, because I was a workaholic. I had no breaks, and I asked for holidays first time, because I never took holidays. When I was working at the Born Free Foundation, I went to an island in Scotland in winter to be isolated from everyone, and I in there I came back as a vegan. So I had to, perhaps if you ask me for what event was that made me an ethical vegan, was the me myself recognizing my inconsistencies and isolating myself from the world in order to
Yeah,
confront them. And when I did, I realized that many of those inconsistencies could be resolved by just me becoming an ethical vegan.
yeah. But you trained as a zoologist,
Yeah.
yeah? But the many zoologists won't go and work for an animal protection organization. But you did.
Well, it
So
depends what.
was that just a fortune, that just an opportunity that arose there, or there was another
Well,
reason for that?
to be honest, I would say many zoologists would end up in animal protection because zoology is just the science that studies animals, and animal protection has animal in the name. So from all professions, zoology is more likely to end up in animal protection because animals are part of the equation. There are many that they study them in a very intrusive way. They don't care about them. They dissect them. They collect them. They do these sort of things. But that's not my kind of zoologist. We tend to say that zoology is a kind of a branch within biology, and the other biologists of white coats that work in labs and like that, and the biologists with boots that go in the field and observe animals in the wild or plants in the wild or things like that. So I'm one of those, one of the boot ones. Therefore, for me, it was all about observing alive animals, and when you observe alive animals, you care about them and you see their behavior. So it's no big leap from there to realize, okay, it's unfair the way the animals are treated. But yeah, if I was a biologist that worked in a lab on genetics or biochemistry, I might not have done that leap. But because I might not have seen animals in the wild and how they behave, I only might have seen a version that is a non-natural version of them in cages and things like that. But when you see them in the wild, you see the full spectrum of behavior, and then it's impossible not to realize that they have feelings and they have the same experience than we have, and they are sentient beings. And then the only logical conclusion then would be, if you like them, don't eat them, don't wear them. And that's
Yeah,
what I normally would do, and any normal zoologist would do. Those that don't go and become vegan, I think they're weird. So zoologists that they don't become vegan, they makes no sense to me. So.
yeah. And the term ethical vegan, which has now come about, how would you define that specifically compared to someone who just says, well, I'm vegan?
Well, the word ethical vegan or the term ethical vegan is not new. It's been around since the 80s. When I wrote my book, Ethical Vegan, it's not that I invented that word. I already used it before I wrote my book. But when I wrote my book, I wanted to find out what was the oldest piece of information where I could find that combination of words. And I found it in 1986 or 97. An ethical vegan is a proper vegan. It's another way to say a real vegan, a proper vegan. Essentially, is somebody that follows the official definition of the vegan society that was first conceived in 1944 when the word vegan was created and finalized in 1988 when they finalized the definition, which is still the same. We haven't changed it, or they haven't changed it since. So there's therefore somebody, the definition of veganism is a philosophy that seeks to exclude, as far as practicable and possible, all forms of animal exploitation and cruelty to animals. So anybody that follows that tries to exclude that, not just for food, but all forms, that's by the definition of the vegan society, a vegan. But many people have started to only apply that definition for the food on the diet and still claim themselves that we're vegan. So because there were many of those, and actually perhaps even more than the actual vegans that follow the definition, there was a necessity for those that follow the definition to say, hey, I'm not like those, I'm different. And that's why they decided to use the adjective ethical in front to say, I'm a real vegan. I'm the one that follows the definition. Others that might say they're vegan, you might have to ask them whether they are not. But those that we follow 100% the definition, that means it's not just food for everything, we're going to say that we're ethical vegan so you don't get confused. And over the years, the process has continued. There's been many people continue saying they're vegan if they only follow the diet. So that need to use ethical vegan has remained to make that distinction. But essentially just mean an official, a true vegan, one that follows that the definition from those who created the word vegan. So.
Yeah. And I think it's important that we do tell people, because you're right, the definition has got diluted to some extent. I personally think mainly in the US more than in the UK. When I know when over there, people say they're vegan, but they're just on a vegan or plant-based diet, rather than living a vegan lifestyle. So I think it's
Yeah, I
important
mean,
that we do
the
extend
definition
the
hasn't been diluted. It's remained the same. It's the interpretation that people has.
interpretation.
So
Yeah, yeah,
basically,
semantic.
people have decided I'm going to call vegan without actually having read the definition. They
Yeah,
just use the word without having really understand what that word means, who invented it, who created, how it is used by those who follow the definition, by the society that created the word that still exists. Of course, you can use any word; it's free. People can choose any word in the way they want. And that creates confusion. So they are not breaking the law for using the word
yeah,
incorrectly.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But it is up to us then to make an effort to make sure people don't confuse us with them. And that's when we need that word ethical vegan.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Jordi. And let's talk a bit, if you're okay, about the court case.
Mm.
Um, Obviously, there was this incongruence with the League Against Cruel Sports having the pension fund. The pension fund was investing in companies that were not that were involved in animal testing, animal experiments. There was the dismissal. I don't have to go into sort of all the details, but you decided on taking a legal action. Is that right? I mean, it's your
Yeah.
decision rather than
Yeah.
somebody advising you, I guess. Is that?
Yeah, it was mine. The essentially when I was fired, which was a shock, obviously for me and everybody else, because the I was only following my philosophy when everything I was saying as when I discovered the pension issues, I communicated to my bosses as you should do. And
Yeah.
they said they will solve it, and they didn't do it. And I keep pursuing because I felt I had to. That my belief was pushing me. I'll tell my colleagues that were vegan too what to do. So I was always doing everything in the aim of helping everyone, helping the donors of the organization, helping the organization itself, my colleagues. And then when you just try to help anyone and they fire you, that's very shocking. So for a while, I didn't know what to do. And also, there was obviously not firing me straight away. There was a period of suspension, then an investigation, then a disciplinary hearing. And during that time, I could not talk to anyone. I was not allowed to talk to anyone. So that was quite stressful. And at one point, when I was actually fired, I said, well, I'm going to fight this because like anybody who's been fired,
Yeah.
there's a chance that you can fight it. But I had no idea whether I could and whether I had the evidence to prove that there was something wrong. And that's when I started to ask lawyers, tell them about my case. And I chose several to have different opinions to say, do you think that I could fight this? And they all said, yeah, do you have a chance to go to the employment tribunal and challenge this? But they all said the same thing, that if you claim you've been discriminated for being vegan, that veganism hasn't been protected yet. However, it can be protected if you are the first one to claim this, because the Equality Act allows to incorporate new protections. It says that philosophical beliefs are protected, but doesn't define how and which. So the system now is based on every time there is a new philosophical belief that hasn't been tested before, then a judge has to check that belief against a series of characteristics that were created by an employment appeals tribunal many years ago. And if they fulfill that, the belief fulfill all the characteristics, then it's protected. And so nobody had done that with veganism. So they all said, well, if you want to try that, you might be the first because nobody has done that. So then I decided, well, I'll go for it. And when I found a lawyer that I like, I thought I had to be a lawyer that knows about employment law, that knows about discrimination, cannot be just any lawyer. He then told me the process, how to do it. And that first I had to be a pre-hearing only on that issue, and that it was a successful pre-hearing, then my case could continue. But if not, they will have to change my case. So I decided to go for it. Of course, the problem is I could not pay my lawyers. I had no money. They were very expensive. So then it became an adventure. That's why I wrote a book, Ethical Vegan, because it's a whole thriller of how I managed to achieve it when I could not really pay anyone and I could not do it for free. So.
Was there any time when you doubted that this was a good way of proceeding, where you thought maybe that you shouldn't continue, or
There were
you were just so
times.
determined?
Well,
Yeah,
there were times where I would not say that there was any times that I was considering giving up, but there were times that I was considering the possibility of losing. So so I thought, yeah, I might do as much as I can. I can try, but there's a huge chance I might lose. And it might be not the right time. I might have a judge that is a vegan phobe. There might be many things that could happen that are out of my control. But overall, I was optimistic because I already when I was pushing this issue about pensions, that last a year, the first time I raised it to my bosses from the moment I was fired was more than a year after. So I had a lot of time to think, well, this is not going well. They're not changing this. And so I was collecting evidence in a way that was essential for my case. Had they been fired because they disconnected immediately my access to emails, had I not been prepared, I would not have had a case because I would not have had evidence. But because I was prepared, because I collected all the evidence, and when I present that evidence to the lawyers, that's when I was confident because the lawyers were very impressed by the amount of evidence I produced. In the end, I produced 1,200 pages of evidence for my case. So,
that's an awful lot of work that you put into that, and tremendous amount of work.
well, I think I was the perfect person to experience this because I knew a lot about law. I had been involved in animal protection in many capacities, but often involved in prosecuting hunters. So I knew how the legal system works. I was in the defense sometimes. I was in the prosecution sometimes. I had been a juror sometimes. So I had a lot of experience about law. And my brain does understand legalized language, and I do have a legal brain. So it was good that it happened to me because I knew the type of evidence I needed. I knew how to build a case. When I approached the lawyer I chose, Peter Daly, I told him, look, this is how I think this should be going through. This is how I think, these are the laws I think we need to approach. These are the offenses, I think, or the breaches of the laws I think they done. And when I ended, he said, yeah, you just got it. It's exactly how I would have advised you to do it. So that gave me confidence that the lawyers were in agreement of understanding my case as I understood. And that was good.
And thankfully you were successful. And so we all know what the outcome is, which is really great for vegans, not just in the UK, but elsewhere beyond, isn't it? I think it's far-reaching, not just in the UK.
Well, it has had the effect that because it's the first jurisdiction that veganism has reached any level of protection, let alone such a high level that puts them at the same path than any philosophical belief or any religion. That means it's unlawful to discriminate, harass, or victimize a vegan, not just in a workplace, but also in the provision of services, public and private. So that's quite a lot. That's never happened anywhere in the world. So everybody pay a lot of attention about this case, and they all got inspired in thinking, well, if it could happen, or if it did happen in England and Wales and in Scotland, well, in the UK, Northern Ireland is the one that is not applied because the Equality Act doesn't apply to Northern Ireland, but almost. But they all kind of thought, well, it could happen here as well. And there's been people trying the same thing since and approaching me many times. They contacted me, they asked me for advice. I give them information on how I did it. So it has not happened yet at the same level, but it has happened at smaller levels. In Bologna, in Italy, there was a case that was won, and they used my case, and in my picture even appear in the papers there when that case was successful. It was just a teacher that she was vegan, and in Bologna the school system allows children that are vegan to have vegan food, but not the teachers. And she felt, oh, that's discrimination against me as a teacher. So she took a legal action against the authorities that regulate the schooling in Bologna in Italy. And then they used my case as an example, and she won, and it was successful, and she got access to vegan meal as her pupils as well.
Fantastic.
So and these are small successes in other jurisdictions that all come from here. So.
Yeah, fantastic. Just moving on from that one, you've been involved in campaigns against hunting, bullfighting, I've got here circuses and lots more. Is there one particular animal welfare campaign that's meant more to you than others?
I think probably bullfighting, just because I grew up in Catalonia where there was bullfighting when I grew up. Now it's banned, and I was involved in the banning of bullfighting. It hasn't been bullfights since we banned it in 2010. So, but I grew up where there were bullfightings there. So it became personal. And the reason I more I like this is that I always felt guilty that I left Catalonia, I moved to the UK, and I started to campaign against hunting, and yet I had not campaigned against bullfighting. So
Yeah,
I
okay.
felt that I had an obligation, having grown up in a country with bullfighting, to campaign against bullfighting, and yet I was campaigning against fox hunting successfully. So it was a guilt in my brain. So when I was working at the League Against Cruel Sports the first time, because I had worked twice, I worked 10 years prior than the time I was fired, so in two different occasions. The first time I was the hunting campaigner, and I proposed and the league to do an anti-bullfighting campaign because I had this feeling I wanted to do it. They agree. And that was quite good because I said, well, in order for me to do it properly, I need to visit every bullfighting country to understand the difference between each countries and the industry, where they change, and to meet the anti-bullfighting movement in each country. And they agree. So I traveled to all bullfighting countries. There's 9 bullfighting countries in the world. And I did all that. I went undercover into the bullfighting industry. I met the anti-bullfighting groups. And I started to get them together and create a network in which they meet every year, sharing tactics. So I kind of created an international network of anti-bullfighting campaigning that didn't exist before I did this. And since then, there have been bans of all over the place. Colombia banned bullfighting a couple of years ago. So Catalonia banned it in 2010, as I mentioned. So there were concrete results. So that's why now I'm satisfied that I ticked the box. All the guilt I had for not having done things about bullfighting, now I can relax because I have done things against fighting, successful things. So that, I think, probably is the subject
The
that I'm
bullfighting.
more satisfied with. So.
And in terms of methods of campaigning active, no, let's talk activism. Is there one or more tactic which you would say is more effective? Because there are different ways, of course, of changing legislation or changing public opinion. Is there one or more that you would subscribe to? You would say, well, that's going to be more effective than doing something else. And
Well,
now, not necessarily then, but now.
yeah. I would say no. And the reason I'm saying no is not because there isn't one, it's because it's impossible to know which one is it. So you can only look back to find out which ones worked.
Yeah.
But you can't just project things that used to work somewhere in the past in now somewhere else. Because although, yeah, there might be some reasons that are the same and circumstances that make them likely to succeed, there might be other circumstances, political and social, that make them not longer to succeed. So the only thing we can do is historically look back and then analyze which ones were most successful. In the present, the only thing that I can say is because we don't know, the best strategy is to have as many strategies and tactics as possible, because one of them might be the most successful. If you only do 2 or 3, might be the wrong ones already. So you want to be as wide in the types and the styles of campaigning, so to maximize the chance that one of those will be successful. And my experience looking back is hardly ever one. It's always a combination of several that makes this difference. If you just focus in one, often we don't reach much. It's the synergy between different ones, that they target a slightly different audience, that they do slightly different emphasis in the message. The combination of those that have a higher chance of success. So therefore, I would say, well, if that's the case, then we should really try to diversify the type of campaigning that we do and tactics. Be sure that there are groups specialized in one, another group specialized in another, and just learn to work together and combine them in a way that they reinforce each other as opposed to fight against each other. And I think that is the recipe of success, variability of tactics.
And for the UK particularly, but it could be more general than this, if there was one particular law or policy that we could change to advance animal rights or veganism, and I don't know whether you have to think about this or whether you know the answer, what do you
No,
think it would be?
I like the questions that I never expected. So go ahead.
What do you think it would be if it was literally we can, we wave the magic wand and the politicians say, you know what, we're introducing a piece of legislation, and it could be animal rights, welfare, or veganism. What would it be?
Well,
What do you
that
think would
is,
be?
well, it's two ways to answer this question. One is, which is the one most likely to occur in the short term, because the circumstances are already ready for this. So if I ask this question, actually it could happen because political parties might be already talking about it. There might be organizations. So there are quite a few of those. For instance, the hunting was partially banned with the Hunting Act, but the Hunting Act was abuse through loopholes and trail hunting by the hunts. So that's is an unfinished business, but now there is a possibility to strengthen the Hunting Act and properly ban it. That's an option, which is quite close. We're halfway there. So if we push that, we could actually hunting proper. Greyhounds racing is likely to fall very quickly. Wales is going to ban it. If Wales ban it, you should just push for Scotland and England do the same. And the industry is going down very quickly. So that is one that could be very achievable. So there are several of those that are things that in a practical terms, if I was a political officer advising an animal protection organization, I would advise for those because they will give success at the short term. But they will not change the bigger picture. They will not take us closer significantly to the vegan world where no animals are exploited, because most animals are exploited for food and agriculture and things like that, as opposed to bullfighting. If I had to lobby for a one that really makes a difference, I would either, which would be technically or almost impossible to change, but that will be the one that will make a difference. I would remind a law that changes who owns animals. So at the moment, the British system is based that on land is owned by landowners and the animals on those areas belong to the landowner. And I will make a law that says no human can own another sentient being. So anyone that is in the land belongs to the state, doesn't belong to the landowner. So the deer in your land belongs to England, not to you. So there is no point to issue a license, because then the state would have the chance to make very quick radical protections that affect everyone, and they didn't have to fight. It's one of those fundamental changes in law that would immediately make it easier to apply any other law that we want to apply. And that would apply as well with vivisection as well. So if you use animal in your university and you use animals for vivisection, those animals don't belong to the university or the researcher, belong to the state. And therefore, the voters have the right to demand this or demand that. So you eliminate an obstacles that we have, that every time that we try to change the laws to improve the animals' lives, is there is somebody's interest that say, no, we want to continue exploiting in this way. And because we have private property in this country and we have the power to do whatever we want, you can't do anything. So that's what I would attempt to do, quite ambitiously. But
yes, thank you for that. And do you think that the animal welfare campaigns, I'm thinking of campaigns to improve the lives of captive animals, such as when they are campaigning for, I don't know, free range as opposed to birds in cages, or sort of getting rid of farrowing crates, that sort of thing. Do you think that's that vegans should stay away from that? Or do you think it's helpful to campaign alongside vegan issues and animal rights issues? Because within the vegan movement, there are some vegans say, it's vegan or nothing. You can't just say, I want to campaign for better qualities, better lifestyle for captive animals, because what you're saying is you accept that animals are in captivity.
Well, I would agree with that position. I would say, yeah, vegans should stay away from reformist animal welfare campaigning. There are different types of animal welfare campaigning. There are abolitionist animal welfare campaigns. These are fine. The ones that, for instance, you don't ban the entire thing, but ban a proportional part of it that would affect the whole industry, make it more likely that the whole thing can be banned later on. So any abolitionist campaign is fine, even if it's run by an animal welfare organizations, and many do. So not all animal welfare organizations do reforms. Some they do a combination of reforms, and the League Against Cruel Sports is a good example. They used to, when I was there the second time, they used to have a reformist campaign for greyhounds, but an abolitionist campaign for hunting. And when I was there, as I was the head of policy and research, before they fired me, I had the chance to change that and make the greyhound also abolitionist. That was one of my contributions, to help the committee to make a change of tactic and approach on that term. And when I had worked in animal welfare organizations in the past, I always work in abolitionist campaigns, because in general, they might help the animals, but they don't help the bigger picture. I think delay the process of creating the vegan world, delay the process of abolitionism. So if they happen, they should not be done by animal rights people or vegans. They should be done by those who exploit the animals. They are the ones that should make campaigns to improve their animals' conditions so they can carry on exploiting in the way they want. That's them. We should just be campaigning trying to stop them exploiting the animals. And just reducing the suffering or minimizing the suffering, that is not one of the goals of veganism. Veganism is not about that, or the animal rights. It's not about that. Veganism is about harming, so stopping the harming, not reducing, stopping it. So when we have the definition of the vegan society, seeks to exclude as far as possible and practical all forms. They says seeks to exclude, not to reduce your exclusion, not to reduce your participation. It's exclude. That means no longer you're participating in any way. That means exclusion. So it's inbuilt in veganism that we don't accept the gradual reforms, but that's where animal welfare exists, and the animal welfare organization, they can do that, but we can do our bit. And that's perhaps the combination of both might have results, but only we stick to our campaigns if we don't get confused campaigning with somebody else's campaigns.
But you will find that within the animal welfare groups, I don't know about the RSPCA, but I'm thinking of, say, Compassion in World Farming, where a number of the people working there will be vegan.
Yeah,
so
as I was working at the league before I was fired.
Exactly.
And I was vegan, but I would not work in any reform. So I would deliberately only choose the campaigns that were abolitionists. And that's how I managed to do both, be working for them and still not betraying my abolitionist goals. Had I been asked to do a reform campaign, I would have left the organization. So
maybe a little controversial one. Is it possible to be an ethical vegan and still have a pet stroke companion animal?
That's two questions. The answer is no to the first, yes to the second. So no, you can't have a pet, because if you say pet, you already have an attitude, I'm the owner, I'm the dominant, you are just a creature to serve me, you are not, so I can do whatever you want me to do, I can choose how I want to breed you, I can choose what you do. That attitude of domineering, that is speciesism, that is the root of carnism. Carnism is a supremacist ideology that says humans are superior, we can do whatever we want. If you think I'm the owner, I'm superior, I can do whatever you want, that attitude is already incompatible. But if you change that word pet by companion, then the whole picture changes. If it says companion, you're my companion, and I look after you as you look after me, and I consider you what you need as you consider it to me, and I share your house as you share it to me. When you treat them as companions, and they are individual animals that want to be with you, if you put them in a cage, that means they don't want to be with you. That means a fish in a tank doesn't want to be with you. A bird in a cage doesn't want to be with you. But a dog and a cat has been domesticated and is developed a relationship with human beings. These two, they could be companions, but it only makes sense from a vegan perspective if you rescue them from shelter, because if you breed them or you buy them, that already departs yourself from that world of animal protection. There's too many dogs and cats suffering and no place to go. So if you create a new one by breeding them, or you breed them in a way that genetically are not healthy, like pedigree dogs that are depart too much from the regional dog, so they would suffer all sorts of disease, that means you're not longer thinking about the animal as a companion. You're still thinking as a product, and in this case, as a pet that you can sell or interchange. It's a matter of attitude. It's a matter of attitudes, and that the attitude is reflected by the words you use. So.
And there's a challenge. I know. I mean, I don't know how many vegans who have companion animals, and the companion animals are. I'm talking about cats primarily here, eating dead animals. So that means there's, they're responsible for buying meat, although the meat is for themselves. It's a challenge that some vegans are facing, and then there's a question of, once you go into the ethical vegan, can they be classified as ethical vegan or just vegan?
You're right. So you're right, but of course there are vegans who have dogs that feed them vegan food, and there are vegans who have cats that feed them vegan food, and then it's hardly a debate now about the dogs, but there's still debate about the cats. I've seen the evidence, I've written about it. I'm convinced that you can have cats and dogs both in a vegan diet, and they might be healthier, not just as healthy as others. They might be even healthier. And I, as a zoologist, I looked into this. I wrote articles about this. I asked the question to myself, are cats obligatory carnivores, as people used to say? And as a zoologist, I look into it and I say, I don't think they are anymore. Perhaps they were when they started to get together with humans, perhaps no longer. So I am satisfied that my opinion is based on true facts and the science, but I also recognize that it's an issue of debate, and many vegans might not look at it in the same way, and that's fine. I mean, it's not, the veganism has some core values that we all share, and there's gray areas at the edges that we have different opinions, and that's fine, as long as the core values are never changed.
Well, I think, I think we may have discussed this before, but it's difficult to be the absolute vegan because you can't be perfect in living in a society where everybody isn't vegan.
Well, funny you say that, but I wrote an article called Perfect Veganism that I was trying to answer the question. And the answer is yes, you can. You can be a perfect vegan. I'll tell you how. Because a vegan is not one that achieves the exclusion of animal exploitation. Is the one that seeks the exclusion. If you 100% try to exclude all animal exploitation from your lives, even if you fail, you are 100% vegan. If you don't try hard, if you just give up because think I'm not going to achieve it, then perhaps you're not. But if you do your best in seeking in any decision the best vegan option possible available to you, that you can do better than that. If you cannot do better than that, that's the definition of perfection. Whether you achieve it or not, that doesn't depend on you. It depends on the circumstances, where you live, the options that exist, the vegan options that have been invented or not yet. But veganism is not defined by what you achieve. It's defined by your intention to detach yourself from the exploitation. So it's all about your intention and motivations and your effort. And if you do have 100% effort, then you're 100% vegan.
Yeah. Okay, that's good. Good to know your opinion on that one. Tying in with the pet thing, now they're coming up with what's the word? The meat made from cells of I don't know. It could be a feather of a chicken or something.
Lab meat or cultivated meat. Yeah,
cultivated meat, which I doubt very much whether the Vegan Society would ever say it was vegan. But from a point of view of saving animal lives, it may be massive. So I don't know what your thoughts are in relation to this. Is for your personal thoughts rather than veganism generally. But
no, I do have a very specific opinion about this. That I don't express it as often as I would. Thank you for giving the opportunity. I'm completely against cultivated meat in all shapes and forms. It's not that I'm not going to consume it. I think no vegan would. I think it should not exist. I think it will delay the building of the vegan wall. It will maintain the idea that meat is edible to humans, maintain the idea that you don't need to search for a vegan wall. You can just go halfway and just give people half of the meat. And I don't think it's going to work. So this idea that it might replace animals on farms is just wishful thinking. Technically, it hasn't reached the level that can scale to the point that can do that. And what the situation at the moment is a lot of money has been invested on this. So all the investors will expect be paid back because they will be unpopular, because carnivore people would not touch it. Vegans will not touch it. Vegetarians will not touch it. Flexitarians will touch it once, but they will then forget about it because they're flexitarians. They don't have rules. And reducitarians will touch it once and then less and then less and then less and then stop touching it because they're reducitarians. So there is no market for it. Because there's no market, the investors will demand the money back. So the companies will collapse and will be bought by the meat companies. And the meat companies will develop it a little bit for tokenistic purposes for a restaurant here and there, and all the money invested will end up back to produce more animals in farms. So I don't think it will work. I think the idea is flawed. And I already mentioned this 10 years ago about in 1020, Ian McDonald, a friend of us, he had a podcast called The Vegan Option. And he put me and another vegan the question of this idea of lamb meat. That was 2012. So that was just an idea, had not been even made. And I already was arguing against it there. I was the one representing the vegans that are against it. And I used these examples are also for the environment. It's high carbon, it's also unhealthy. You're still producing cholesterol. All the bad things of meat are retained and none of the good things. And the idea that it's going to save animals is just wishful thinking. That's my strong opinion. So.
Yeah. I think that most of the cultivated meat is done for environmental reasons rather than animal rights reasons. I'm not. I think it's to do with that. There's a question mark about how the press will consider it because when we had the GM foods and there was a backlash and it
Yeah.
became labeled as Frankenstein foods.
And that will happen again.
If I say
Well,
if
it's
it
already
happens
happened.
again, we end up with a problem. From a point of view of companion animal food, and I'm going back to however many cats there are in this country. If you feed, so it's cheap enough, if they can make it cheap enough,
Which I
and
don't
it
think will ever
becomes,
make it cheap enough. Because
sorry,
I don't think they will make it cheap enough because it costs so much to produce and the inventors will demand so much from it. And the
right.
companies that have the rights will demand a lot of money that will never reach to the level that will be cheap. So therefore, it will be an elite thing for a very specific people that will pay a premium for it. And after a couple of years, it will collapse because they will not even reach. So, I mean, obviously, I'm speculating. I'm not able to see the
In a
future.
way, I'm hoping that you're wrong, but because my view is
But
very
the point
different.
is, the if there was no other option for the animals that we keep as companions, I would say, well, perhaps it's a necessary evil, but they are. So dogs don't need it. Dogs, there's so much
Yeah,
evidence that
dogs
they're
don't
healthy.
need
And
absolutely.
cats,
Yeah.
as I said earlier, I do believe that there's enough evidence to show now that with a tiny percentage of investment, you can produce far better vegan cat food that made the need for this meat, fake meat or lab meat, no longer necessary at all. So, and
Yeah.
compare how much it would cost to produce it, and the alternatives, how cheaper they are. It makes no economic sense. But for me, the most important concept really is the concept of meat. I think the concept of it should be abolished. It should be a time in the future when people only think about meat as something that the crazy people from the past used to do. And in order to abolish the concept, which is more than just the flesh, it's the meaning of it, the symbolism that people use it, then you can't just accept any type of meat. You have to go against all types of meat
Yeah.
to eliminate that concept.
Well, we're doing, and both of us started, for animal rights reasons. And we were talking about, obviously, there are different reasons why somebody may go vegan. And you talked about that mansion and
Yeah.
going on different pathways to it. Which is the one that you think is going to be, I'll say, no, I don't know if the word winning is correct, but do you think that over the next 5 or 10 years, it's more likely that people were going to go plant-based and then vegan for environmental reasons, or for the dietary reason that people are realizing that there's very unhealthy eating meat? Or do you think it will be that animal rights will have a resurgence? Because it seems to have, animal rights. I mean, I've been campaigning for 40 something years ago, and it's sort of the campaigns, the big campaigns seem to have fizzled. Veganism, the numbers went up and then they came down in terms of how many vegans there are. So the question is, what's the thing that's going to shift this? Is it going to be the environment, or will it be food, or will it be something else?
The way I look at it is I don't look at these 5 dimensions as competing with each other. So I think they all will work to reinforce each other. If one gets too high, we would not make much of a difference. Because I remember the analogy of the mansion works well. Because imagine this as we want everybody lives in the mansion. Which door should be bigger, basically saying,
Yeah.
which door should we make more propaganda with? Well, we said, it doesn't matter because once we cross the threshold, they're already in. So it doesn't matter the size of the door. If there is a lot of people wants to use one, let's make that one bigger now. But if suddenly somebody wants to use another one, but there's no reason to force one over the other because it depends what people are interested. Now, at this moment, environmental is the one that is more popular, I would say. But in the past, that wasn't the case. The first door was spirituality. The first vegans were only connected to religion. That was huge then, still is there, but that was popular. Then health began after that one. Health was the next one to become popular. Animal rights as it wasn't the first, was the third door in terms of popularity. Then the last one built is social justice. It's not environment. So the social justice is bound to grow more and more, and that will reach demographics that we haven't reached now. So I think it depends where you look at it. Some places one is more popular than others. Sometimes one is more better than others. So we just need to be aware of how society change and in which direction it goes, and to be sure that we have a door for whatever people are ready to use it. So
yeah, but not everybody going in through one door will want to explore all the other ones.
no,
As you realise.
that is true, but that is their problem. It's like somebody going to the mansion and just deciding to live at the hall, at the vestibule.
Yes.
And you just go and say, explore the mansion. No, I'm scared. I don't scared. Fine. Well, you can sit here at the door. That would make no sense. If I was invited to live in a mansion, I would, and they say, it's all free. You can go anywhere. You can use the whole mansion. I would use it. I would just not sit at the hall. Who sits at the hall? The people that are just started, just a vegan, they use that gateway. They don't know the other ones. They haven't heard about them. They're a bit overwhelmed by the whole thing. So they are nervously walking very slowly at the hall. Fine, give them time to explore. And after a few years, they will explore. Or people that they don't really want to go in. So they just were interested in environment and they just moved to that door because look very environmentalist. But once they enter, they said, oh, no, that's not for me. Animals are not for me. And they are still there, not really helping. But if you really want to use the mansion, you will end up exploring them all. So.
I hope so. I do hope so. By the way, if anybody has any questions, just post them in the chat and I will read them out to Jordi. So going on from it, do you think that ethical veganism will be accepted mainstream? Because they said we're still a sort of minority, particularly in the UK. I'm not sure about elsewhere.
Well, that's the goal. The vegan world idea that we all have as a aim, which is good to have these big aims that are far in the distance, but it's always good to have something to aim for. This is a world where the majority of people have vegan and accepted veganism, and that includes the politicians. That means they will change the laws, they consider this infrastructure of animal agriculture. So if it still exists, it's not dominant anymore. So how do you get there? Well, you need to increase the number of vegans, but not just in number, the importance of the vegans. So you need to get decision makers to become vegans, not just any person. So I don't think numbers are enough. I'm not about quantity, it's about quality. So finding the right decision makers of the right places, and then if they become vegan, they have a much faster influence to building the vegan world. And they can, an example, there is in Lebanon, there is the first hospital 100% vegan in the world. And why that happens in Lebanon for all places? Well, because the director became vegan. The owner of the family, there was a family hospital. He owned it, became vegan, and decided, well, I'm going to make that. So this is how you do it. You get the right person vegan, and then you advance much faster. But it will take a long time to have enough politicians that vegan, but we have already quite a few in the UK. There, and that's the right direction. So we need to carry on making other vegans, not because just numbers is the aim. It's just because among those there will be decision makers that will advance the process faster in the future. So.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I know John's got his hand up. John, do you want to unmute yourself?
You mute. We can't hear you. You're unmute.
John.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I was just going to say that you've disabled the chat, so no one can send a message on the chat.
Oh.
Because I tried to send some questions in, it says the host has stopped the chat.
I don't know if I can change that. I don't know if I can, but I'll see if I can. Okay. Did you have a question?
I have it. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Animal rights activists used to shout out, meat is murder. So I'm wondering from your point of view, Jordi, who you're into the law as well, would you say that if someone's eating meat, technically, is it murder or is it killing?
Good question. No, I would not use the word murder because it's a very specific word. There are murder might be used metaphorically, and if this is used metaphorically, perhaps yes. But if it is an actual legal term, so it's not the same manslaughter. So therefore, if there is a legal term, you can just go and check, and that legal term doesn't apply to anybody else other than when the victim is a human. So it's been defined as a human-centric term, while killing isn't. Killing is a perfect word that applies to any living being. Therefore, killing is more accurate when it's not human. So I understand what is used because it's not used to be with intention to be descriptive. It's used to either to shock, which sometimes is a good tactic, to shock when somebody doesn't want to listen to you. You shock them and then they listen to you. That's a potential with a strategy. Or either to make people reflect, reflecting to saying, if you consider murder bad, why don't you consider the same behavior, even if you call it differently, also bad? So it has reasons why it's been used, but it also might backfire. Then people become defensive and react negatively. But I don't use it. I don't use it for that purpose because I think it's inaccurate and there are better words that describe what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks for the question,
Very good
John.
answer.
There are
Thank
some
you.
questions that have come through via the chat, so the chat is working.
Is it?
Paul wrote a question for you, Jordi. So you wrote an article about the provision for older vegans in care a while ago. You drew fairly pessimistic picture. How might ethical veganism ruling be applied to ensure that vegans in this situation are properly cared for and that their views are respected?
Yeah, well, the reason I wrote the article was precisely because I thought, since my legal case, the situation should be different now than they used to be before. So, and care homes should take better consideration of anybody that ends up dead that is a vegan. And when I look into it, I realized, no, they're not. Although they technically can. So nobody said, no, we're not going to look into this. We're just not applying it properly. And it needs nudging. It needs people asking for it, people reminding them about the law. And if you do, if anybody that ends up in that position to end up in a place like that, demand that the law is being considered, demand not to be discriminated, then they will have to make the change because they all accept that the lawful way to approach it is being not discriminating against any ethical vegan. They just don't apply it because nobody complains or because they have very few ethical vegans, perhaps because they live longer, I don't know, ending up in these places. But that was my experience. My experience was trying to contact them, approach the government. What it was good, it seemed pessimistic, but what it was good from the article is discovering that there was an acceptance. They were not fighting against this. There was an acceptance that it had to happen, but they just had not developed the mechanisms to do it properly. But that's only a matter of people keep pushing it and keep pushing it. But nobody should be discriminated in those places. If you want to live in already and you've been discriminated, you have the law in your sight. You could approach a solicitor and just challenge them.
Okay, thanks for that one. Personal question for you: as an ethical vegan, do you eat figs, avocados, and do you travel by flying?
No, and no. I do none of these things. I don't eat figs. I don't eat kiwis either, for the same reason that I don't eat avocados.
Do you want to explain, for anybody watching this, do you want to explain the reason?
Well, there are different reasons. The figs is because the original figs in the wild, they need a wasp as a symbiotic relationship with the wasp to pollinize themselves. The figs in itself is not a fruit. It has flowers inside. It's like a universe when inside they have the flowers and the seeds and the fruits. And then a wasp has to go in, fertilizing, and then dies and remains stay there and get dissolved. Just for the fact, because I study wasp as a zoologist, I have a particular connection with wasp. Just for the fact that might have a chance to have some elements of wasp in there, I don't eat them because I respect wasp. Some varieties of figs don't do that. They now develop some varieties that they don't need the wasp. But how can I know which one is which? So in order for me to be certain, I rather don't eat any. So avocados or kiwis is because they tend to, it's the same question. In some places, they use migrating bees. That means migrating bees means no normal bees that just pollinate the fields. It's bees that are captured from one place and taken forcibly on another place in order to force them to pollinize that field, and they're affecting the local population of bees that then are competing with these domestic bees. So there's a lot of reasons not to be in favor of migrating bees. And some countries do that often, like California, some states, and things like that. Some don't. But again, I might not necessarily know when I buy it. If I knew, I might say, okay, that one is fine. So in order for me not to waste time, I decide, well, I don't need any of this. I don't need to eat this stuff. I decided not to, so I don't have to look into it. And flying, I don't fly anymore for environmental reasons. Unless they invent a better way to fly, then I would just go for it. I'm going now, for instance, in Luxembourg next week to the International Animal Rights Conference. I give a talk there, but I'm not flying. I'm taking the slow way there to Luxembourg. So.
Thank you for the answers. Thank you for the question. Is bullfighting embedded in some societies such that it will be impossible to ban? And the person wrote, I think in the same sense that game bird shooting is in this country. And then there's another question, which is not a bit different, which is, are people
let me forget the second one. Let me
answer that one. Yeah, answer that one.
So there's no animal cruelty event embedded in the society to the point that you cannot stop it. Anything might take perhaps been a tradition for centuries, but it might disappear in 1 century in a few years. Bullfighting is the least embedded of all. Shooting is far more embedded than bullfighting. No country that has bullfighting, people like it anymore. The majority, all polls in each country, and you ask the question, they all want to ban it. So it's already a reason. The reason it's still there is because not just the votes, it's the powerful people, because bullfighting is connected to particular parties, to particular powerful rich people. They keep it there, but the population is already against it. So it has nothing to do. Otherwise, I would not have seen so many bans in my lifetime. Shooting is much more difficult, but not impossible. It just takes a longer time. But there is nothing that humans do that should not be doing, that we should give up trying to stop. So we should try them all. So.
And the person, Antonio, also wrote, are people imposing vegan food on their companion animals so they can't decide for themselves?
Well, they are companion animals.
Cruelty to animals?
Well, they're companion animals. So if you ask them, go and give them some money, go and buy whatever you want, I'm sure they will buy vegan food. Why? Because if they knew the difference, if they recognize the health benefits, of course, they don't have that privilege. They don't have that information. If they had the same amount of information, yes. But I would say there is a valid point that we give them what we choose is good for them, which is the same point of a parent giving a child food that the child might not like, but the parents thinks it is. So if it's okay to allow children to eat the food chosen by the parents, it should be okay to allow dogs to eat the food chosen by the guardian. So this is another term for companions.
I agree. Thank you. I'll leave the last question, which is from Hazel. She says, hi, Jordi, I applaud and admire your amazing passion and dedication in stopping cruelty. Made a significant difference with all campaigns you work on. Do you believe that one day in the near future we will have a vegan world and people will finally realize how disgusting and cruel it is to eat animals?
Yeah, I'm convinced.
There's another bit that comes out. I'll ask the other bit in a moment.
Okay. Yeah, I'm convinced the vegan world it will happen. It's inevitable. It is impossible a future without a vegan world, because there's two options we have here. One is we mess the world so much that we got extinct, the humanity disappear, and that's a vegan world. A world without humans is already a vegan world. Yeah. Or the few that remain, that survive, they will have to find another way to live if they want to survive. And that way, the only way out is veganism. So the veganism is the way out for us, our survival as a species, which incidentally affect everybody else in the planet. But either way, we are already messing things so badly that is either we're going to disappear completely and that's a vegan world, or we will have to build it to survive. So either way, yeah. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen in 1 generation. Not in 2 or in 3, probably 4 or 5, but it will happen.
Yeah. Thank you for that. She also adds on, abattoirs, will they be operating for many years? Even CCTV has not stopped this horrific, cruel killing. I think, the CCTV, the campaign was by Animal Aid, and it was about welfare. They are a vegan organization, but it was about making sure that the people who work there are not abusing what they should be doing.
But it's an example. It's an example of the other example of an animal welfare campaigning an animal rights organization before I gave examples of the other way. And I don't think it is effective for the reason of being an animal welfare regulation element, which for me, generally speaking, they tend to be not effective. They always make small changes that are easily to be hidden. The exploiters and abusers can find ways around them, and they're so small that if they are really enforced, still they make a very little contribution.
Okay. That I'm going to bring this to a close. I'm going to say a really big thanks, Jordi, for Jordi didn't know what the questions were before we started this. He and I, some of them were, I think, maybe a little bit challenging, but you answered them amazingly well. So a big thank you. Can I ask everybody to join me with a round of applause for Jordi? Thank you, Jordi. Not that, there's a barking going on. Thanks, Jordi. And just Jordi's book, just remind me where you can get the book Ethical Vegan from. Yeah, well, the book Ethical Vegan, you can see here, you can get it anywhere that sells books. Okay. Anywhere. You go to bookshop, they will sell it there. If they don't have it there, you can order it in the bookshop. In Amazon, anything that sells books, you can order it. So no place in particular. It's not one that I publish myself. It's a proper published book by a publisher, therefore it's available everywhere in the world. Okay. Best of luck. Thanks again. I'm just going to stop. Thank you. Thanks.